that led to this shift of the shipment of drugs, which is really what we're talking about here, being, moved from Colombia through Miami to more Colombia through Mexico. So all the drugs started coming through Mexico for various reasons, including, some smart Mexican cartel leaders like Amado Carrillo, who decided not to just take money for the shipment, but actually wanted a piece of the action. And so they ended up gaining more and more control and over both the drugs themselves, but also the trade. Because most of the drug shipments are all done on consignment. I mean, people are fronting money. It's syndication. It's not like, one guy has all the drugs and moves them on all his boats. There's a lot of parts to it. The Guadalajara cartel kind of predates Amado Carrillo, but what happens is the Guadalajara cartel kind of breaks up. And it kind of traces, the breakup you could say it was coming anyway, but it kind of happens because of this case of Kiki Camarino, who was a DEA agent in the mid-'80s, who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by members of the Guadalajara cartel, including one of its leaders, Caro Quintin. Who's really in charge or how it happens, is a mystery. I think there's a mixture of kind of a permanent presence in these agencies that are making decisions and operations that run for years through presidents, and presidents may not even know in many cases about these operations, and they just continue to run. And these agencies also have incentives to get funding to keep their programs going. So and also black money, covert money. It's easy to keep your operations going if you're in the covert world, if you can, access drug money or use money that's off the books, put it that way. And this is clear. This has been made clear to me by intelligence folks and law enforcement. Agencies like the CIA overseas are God. They call the shots at the end of the day. And if you have a law enforcement operation going on that interdicts or interferes with a CIA operation, CIA will win every time overseas. And the CIA could care less about drugs. That is not their priority. Their priority is intelligence. And if that means working with drug cartels and working with criminals to get that intelligence, which they deem is in a national security interest, that's what they do. So there's an inherent conflict, and there's been plenty of cases where law enforcement operations that were interdicting huge drug operations in Latin America were either jammed up, sabotaged, subverted, or informants taken out of the picture to hurt those operations. And I've run across that over and over again in many different ways because they interfered with what was deemed a national security interest being pursued by the CIA, which might be assuring that a certain government, no matter how corrupt, stays in power, because that is deemed to be in the best interest of this. That's why it does matter, I think, still who is in the White House, because some are capable of greater cruelty and impunity than others, but the system itself makes it almost inevitable that will continue no matter who is in the White House. It starts to make you wonder, why is nobody paying attention to this? Why is there no check on this kind of...
Well, because it makes us Americans like to think of themselves as the good guys, and, if we're the ones supplying the weapons that are committing all the murders, that undermines our self-perception.
Well, and I know that's kind of a rhetorical question, but it's the other... What the common denominator that I put together between drugs and guns is guns become more valuable and drugs are more valuable when they're illegal. And that's the common denominator, is that whenever you create these banned and illegal products that everybody wants, you automatically create a black market that leads to all this corruption. And so, that's kind of where I came around to the fact that, I can't be a purist, but I do think legalization, and I've seen this in Seattle in the last year, people at least aren't going to jail or getting shot in the streets for smoking a joint, or having a couple grams of pot. That's a vast improvement over what I saw happening in Mexico and the bloodshed that was happening as a result of the gun and arms trades across the border there. And, if I'm going to make a political speech, that's it, I mean, wake up, America, don't believe the hype. It's the truth is people want things to stay the status quo because they're profiting from it. But look who's suffering and determine for yourself if this system makes sense.
Okay.
That led to this shift of the shipment of drugs, which is really what we're talking about here, being moved from Colombia through Miami to more Colombia through Mexico. So all the drugs started coming through Mexico for various reasons, including some smart Mexican cartel leaders like Amado Carrillo, who decided not to just take money for the shipment, but actually wanted a piece of the action. And so they ended up gaining more and more control and over both the drugs themselves, but also the trade. Because most of the drug shipments are all done in consignment. I mean, people are fronting money. It's syndication. It's not like one guy has all the drugs and moves them on all his boats. There's a lot of parts to it. The Guadalajara cartel kind of predates Amado Carrillo, but what happens is the Guadalajara cartel kind of breaks up. And it kind of traces the breakup, you could say it was coming anyway, but it kind of happens because of this case of Kiki Camarino, who was a DEA agent in the mid-'80s, who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by members of the Guadalajara cartel, including one of its leaders, Caro Quintero. Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the things I discovered in talking with folks, ATF and various other experts, and following the Fast and Furious cases, the markup on U.S. weapons in Mexico is huge. The one case example I was given was, a particular pistol that sells for 5 times its value if you can get it across the border. The weapons business is huge money. Now, the other thing that I discovered...
Because Mexico doesn't make guns.
Well, in fact, Mexico, it's really hard to own a gun legally. And the kinds of guns you can own are, little, firecrackers compared to the kind of weapons that are coming across from the U.S. and elsewhere. They come in from Russia and China as well. But here's the deal with what was kind of amazing to me about the weapons is some of those weapons making it into the cartel's hands were actually legally provided to the cartels through a backdoor channel via the U.S. government. And here's how it works. There's a program where private companies apply to the State Department for a license to ship guns or sell guns to foreign entities, including foreign nations. And in Mexico, all the gun purchases first go to the Mexican military. So this State Department program, which is sending billions of dollars in munitions and weapons to Mexico, for profit, these companies are all making money off this. They just get a State Department stamp of approval. Then these weapons go to the Mexican military, which of course is corrupt, which then diverts these weapons to the cartels. There's very little monitoring just because they don't have the resources of this State Department program. But there was at least a couple cases where they discovered diversion from the Mexican military to the cartels of these weapons that were being sold. So there's money being made in the legitimate market by legitimate munitions makers and weapons makers selling guns to Mexico that are then diverted to the cartels. But it all goes on because everyone's making money. There's no real crackdown on doing the follow-up investigations necessary to make sure these weapons aren't diverted. And this is going on across the world. The arms trade is a huge business. It's bigger. I would argue it's as bigger than drugs, and they both go together. And when I started looking into the arms business, it was staggering to me the volume that we were talking about just in Latin America, but just spread it around the world. And of course, maybe that's not news to anybody, but when you put it in the context of how these weapons are then diverted to spread this bloodshed and carnage and hundreds of thousands of people dead in a drug war in Mexico over the last 10 years, it
was like Manuel Noriega. I mean, anybody who really knows what happened knows that the prosecution, in fact, the prosecution was dragged kicking and screaming into a court. Nobody wanted to do Noriega.
They didn't want to.
It was the same thing. He's been protected forever. He was there, took part in everything that I'm telling you. That's hard evidence. I'm used to testifying before a grand jury. You indict this guy, maybe CIA, you indict him. I have the evidence. And that's what my books were. That's what I saw, what I could testify to. And nobody wanted me to testify. I was writing it to keep sane. I couldn't believe what was happening to me. But I do know that at that point, I had never lost a case in court, and I thought my words would be respected because of my reputation and because I'm a professional and I document stuff. So everything that I put in the book is items and things that are so well documented that I passed the libel readings like 2-3 times before they would publish it. Yet our government looked the other way at it. They don't want to see it. So from that perspective, is that there's somebody in the American government, in intelligence work or in enforcement, who has their shit together. That doesn't exist. These people have no idea what they're doing. They're college boys. They live the illusion of danger. They really have no sense of reality. They themselves don't understand how it functions, how the monster functions out there. And it doesn't function by this organization, some organizational genius, which Chapo was not. None of them were organization. Maybe Micheal Rodriguez was organizational to some point.
August Record sounds like it.
August Record. There was a few and far between. And the ones that are really smart become CIA assets. That way they're protected. It's the best insurance. So that you get to run your organization and be protected. All you have to do is show that you can control the government or have government influence. And the CIA, and sell the CIA on the fact that that government that's anti-drugs are communist. Or that government is whatever is the enemy of the world.
Terrorism.
Yeah, terrorism. Like right now, I guarantee you that Central Intelligence is protecting as much as they can the heroin, the opiate. That's an agency that, my experience says should not exist. Would just do America a huge favor, save us trillions and stop hurting us by getting rid of them. They don't do any